Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to have a quick chat with you all about Donald Trump's recent attacks on the Manhattan DA's office. Over the past week, the former president has called for disruptive protests, claimed that there would be death and destruction should he be indicted, and even posted a picture of himself holding a baseball bat next to a picture of the Manhattan DA so that it looks like Trump is about to clobber the DA over the head with said baseball bat. Now, this has a lot of people concerned that Donald Trump is trying to incite some sort of January 6th style event if he's indicted, and to be fair, their concerns seem to be pretty well founded. Over the past week, there have been several false bomb threats called into both the courthouse and the DA's office, and on Friday, the DA received a threatening letter that contained white powder within the envelope, harkening back to the 2001 anthrax attacks. Now, this powder was deemed to be harmless, but we can see that there are people taking action over the president's language. So, let's do a little bit of risk assessment and see what might happen should Trump be indicted in any of the investigations that he is currently under. Let's start off with the big question. Will there be another January 6th style event where a large number of Trump supporters storm a government building in order to prevent something from happening to the former president? And the answer is not likely. And the reason for that is that right now, Donald Trump supporters are much more keenly aware of the consequences of participating in such an event. In the lead up to the 6th, there were a number of protests against the election results, and nothing came of them. People went, they protested, and that was the end of it. And of the people who went to the events of the 6th, we've heard in their testimony that they felt that they were obeying the president's orders. They were being patriots. They weren't going to be arrested for what they were doing. Being arrested at a protest is something that happens to other people, like BLM protesters or Antifa. It couldn't happen to me. And let's be fair, that's a very human logical fallacy to have. We've all looked at a risky situation and said, yes, I know there are potential negative consequences to what I'm about to do, but that's a statistic and that happens to other people. I'll be fine. Then we've gone on and done that risky behavior, and maybe it paid off, maybe it didn't. For a lot of the people who stormed the Capitol, it has not paid off, as we've seen over 1,000 arrests and a not insignificant number of people facing significant jail time for their actions on the 6th. So, if a Trump supporter is doing their own risk assessment and deciding whether they're going to attend an event to prevent Trump from being indicted or storm a trial or whatever, they're probably saying, hey, I saw what happened on the 6th. A lot of people went to jail. I don't really want to take that risk. Especially because nothing changed after January 6th. Biden still became president, so do I really want to risk going to jail for something that I don't honestly think is going to change anything? Another factor that significantly decreases the risk of another January 6th style event occurring is the conversations that are going on within right-wing media ecosystems. For example, you have Representative Jim Jordan allegedly looking into the weaponization of the Justice Department. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene claiming that some of the Capitol rioters are being held as political prisoners and that there is allegedly torture going on in the DC jails. And then you have dozens of other wonky conspiracy theories about how January 6th was incited by the FBI or Antifa, or there are all these informants infiltrating Trump events trying to help with that weaponized DOJ in investigating Trump supporters and putting them in jail. So, if you believe any of this, as, some Trump supporters do, again, why would you go to this kind of an event if you think that this is a prime opportunity for a weaponized Democrat DOJ to fill with FBI and Antifa sympathizers and informants and just scoop us all up and put us in jail and torture us and God knows what else? So again, by their own narrative, getting together for such an event like that is just a very dangerous proposition. Now, again, obviously none of this is actually true, and I want to point that out very clearly, but that is the conversations that are going on within the right-wing media ecosystem, so if that's the only place people are getting their news from, it's very likely that they believe at least some of this information, and when they're doing their own risk assessment, it just makes the prospect of attending a January 6th style event really just a terrible, terrible idea. Now, that's not to say that nothing will happen. I do believe that should Trump be indicted, something very serious will happen, and it will likely be more dangerous than the events of January 6th. Now, I don't mean to downplay the seriousness of the attack on the Capitol, but let's face it, it was kind of a mess. You had groups like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys who had a bit more of a plan going in as to what they wanted to accomplish when they stormed the Capitol, but most of the rioters seemed a bit more, for lack of a better word, casually invested in the operation and were just kind of along for the ride to cause chaos, disrupt the process, and hopefully prevent Biden from becoming president, though the how was somewhat vague to them and they didn't really seem to care. And if you've ever tried to plan anything, if you don't have a clear plan for how you're going to achieve your goal, you're probably not likely to achieve it. So, the events of the 6th transpired and failed to prevent Joe Biden from becoming president. However, now all of those casually invested supporters, they're gone. They've done their own risk assessment and said, I don't want to be involved in this anymore. That leaves the groups that are very seriously invested and are willing to accept the risks of going to jail. For those individuals who decide that going to jail is an acceptable outcome, they have a much wider range of options in order to accomplish their goals. They might, for instance, call in a false bomb threat or send in a fake anthrax attack letter, both of which are illegal. And if that doesn't work, they always have the option to upgrade to the real thing. We saw 2 pipe bombs left outside of the RNC and DNC in the lead up to the events of January 6th, and there have been a number of biological and chemical weapon attacks throughout U.S. history. Additionally, they could go farther than that and actually gather up groups of armed men to specifically target, kidnap, or even execute political figures, much like what 3 men were convicted of doing in an attempt to kidnap and potentially assassinate Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Now, I'm sure that Donald Trump would simply categorize any of these events as an inevitable part of the death and destruction that would happen should he be indicted. But I'm going to call it what it is: domestic terrorism. Terrorism, by definition, is the threat or use of violence to achieve one's goals, in this case, the political goal of forcing various investigators to not charge the president for crimes that it seems at least that he is most likely committed. And that's the bottom line of it all. The former president, through his calls for death and destruction against his political opponents, is calling for domestic terrorism. And it does seem that he has followers out there who are more than willing to answer that call. Think about it.